We're back. It's the Daily Stripe, April 3rd, Championship Monday. Nikki Snacks Kreider, Alexander Tossman, Oxtopoulos, Joshua Fisher's not here. So we called in the reliever here, Chris Dickerson, farm to show. What's
That's
going on,
right.
man?
We had a scratch in the lineup. Paul Giannis went down with sickness, and so we're
Down
getting
with the sickness.
called down to 3A. Here I am. Getting my first big league appearance on
Bugs going
on the
around.
show today. It is. It's going on the bug. It's going around. I learned that in the drop off line this morning at KB or kindergarten drop off that this stomach bug is hitting quite a few people. So, Giannis, if you're out there,
Thoughts and prayers. Jinx.
Stay strong, man.
Well, we wanted to talk a little bit about the new rule changes. Obviously, that was the talk of the town all off season, but opening weekend is over. It's done. Most teams played 4 games here, and I want to go down the list of how it affected each category. So in 2023, 50 games were played this weekend. In 2022, 49. So pretty close. Time of game. 2022 was 3:09 for the average time of game. 2023 was 2:38. Huge win. Massive win.
Massive win. Those are the types of games that you could only pray for on a daily basis. We used to call those Maddox games back in the day, and those are the games, those getaway days, those games when you've played 11, 12 straight, and you'd be like, dude, can we get a quick one? Can we get a Maddox game, which is that 2-hour 20-minute, 2-hour 30-minute? But I mean, it's just so relieving, just being able to just continue going, being on defense, being in the clubhouse, everything is just, it just moves better. It feels better. You get out, you get to go spend time with your family, you get to go to dinner, you get on the plane sooner, you get into the next hotel sooner. And that's a huge win. And again, as you'll get into, nothing got compromised. And that's all we could have asked for with that time and with the clock, is locking in people to be engaged, more consistently, by not having these 3-hour 30-minute, 3-hour 15-minute games.
Yeah.
But not compromising the on-field play and performance. And so that stat in itself is of utmost importance.
So the Maddox being Greg, right? Because he's just dealing. Is that what it is?
Yeah,
He just made quick work of.
Yeah, quick work on the line. Yeah, so between him, Burley, him and Burley were all-time greats as far as pace of the game. Get the ball, throw. Get the ball, throw. Left, right, change, roll over, 1, 2, 3, 12-pitch innings, and we're out. And those are the types of games you would expect a quick game, because
Right.
it was a no BS, get on the mound, go. But the ball was put in play, lots of outs, and usually that's what you're going to be looking at. And those were the games okay, we knew it was going to be a quick one. We'll take this one. It's kind of a blow after a 3-game series or a 10-day road trip. It's sometimes you need that 2-hour 30-minute game.
But none of these, I didn't feel like we missed any of the bats either in opening weekend. That Red Sox Orioles game where the Red Sox had a walk-off, 10-9, right? And what was the run time on that game? Wasn't that bad?
So that was I think it was a 2:45 game or something. We were watching the Red Sox game and sitting here at Fenway on a day game. Those are usually 4-hour games, for the fans' perspective, finally, it's moving. But talking about some offense here, let's talk a little bit about the batting averages and all that, on base percentage, slugging. So in 2022, the opening weekend batting average was 230, and then it moved up to 245. And of course, you can say that's probably because of the shift. Most of those are singles, but that is a huge win as well. More excitement in baseball. As a hitter, I'm sure you can attest to that.
Yeah, I mean, going back, and I think about the Joey's commercial about the shift, and it's just ball in the 4-hole. Well, that's a hit. Yeah, and did you hear there's no shift? Okay, cool. But yeah, you did have a lot of those. You had balls in the 4-hole, balls in the 6-hole that are traditionally, were hits that would have been gobbled up by the third baseman playing in the hole, and got those back. But with that being said, not only great, more action, more guys on base, but guys are starting to take advantage, and I think that's the most important part. We're just not we're not just getting to first base and we're just sitting there. They're giving you the no run sign, and there's no emphasis on the run game. Guys are getting on, and they're putting that to action. And again, the secondary part of that, in that is this great benefit of more action. Not just the guys getting to first, but it's what's going to happen after that. Then we have balls in the hole, then we have ball down the line, and that going from first to third, we have this excitement of people constantly in motion. And it's a great thing for, it's a great thing as you're going to talk about with the stolen bases, the 80%, 83% jump in stolen bases is phenomenal, because as Paul and I mentioned early in one of our shows, like that was going to be one of the things to look out for. And as a a plus base runner and a guy who had to steal bases, the more savvy guys are going to take this pitch clock to advantage.
Yeah.
And they're going to be able to essentially time this out.
Right.
Once those first two pickoffs go over, pitcher has no choice but to go. So you're sitting on first base, you're like 3, 2, all right, I'm gone. And that's what we saw.
Just the advantage of knowing that when he's going to go.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. You're not, there's no doubt or there's no doubt of him making additional pickoff. He's like, okay, I know this is where I'm going. Get a good read on the pitcher, and we're gone.
It's less guessing.
Way less guessing.
Yeah.
And honestly, if you really look at the stolen bases, most of them weren't that close, because you can get such good jumps that, I mean, they're throwing down, but they're safe by they're not bang bang by any means.
Right.
Yeah. Feel bad for these catchers, and obviously we haven't even mentioned the bases being bigger too. That adds a little bit, as the slide comes in. Really quickly, on base percentage went up about 15 points, and then slugging didn't go up that much. Obviously, because we're talking about singles, but the stolen base percentage is what we're talking about here. So in 2022, 29 out of 43 safe stolen bases, which is 67.4%, and then 2023, 70 out of 84. So almost double the amount of attempts, but 83.3 success rate. That is insane. I feel so bad for catchers right now.
And that's where I'm going to. It's not just the fact that you're utilizing the game by having more runners on to have the potential of putting people in motion. It's the success rate in knowing that these guys are getting much better jumps based on that. So when I said that they're not close, like I meant they're not close, because you're reading it like there's no apprehensiveness. No,
Yeah.
It's 1, 2, okay, we're gone. And so that's where that success rate comes in, is because that's the system that it's created, and it's awesome. But for these smaller teams, you saw all across the league that these teams are just grinding it out, putting runners in motion. You've had a couple hit and runs where balls being put in
More
play.
small ball.
You're putting the runners in motion. Balls are going into play. It's causing havoc. Balls that are going off the glove. Guys are going first to third. So getting these guys with the emphasis on base running, and they mentioned that with the Reds is the emphasis on base running, and it hampered them. On the defensive side, there was a little bit of it hampered them a little bit with some outfield play, but they made up for it on with savvy base running. But all around, again, huge success. Like literally success, 83%, which is wild given they almost double the number of base, just the volume, but also the success rate.
What do you think? Huge. What do you think this means for like roster creation going forward? Like, obviously, speed guys are good, but it's always, I don't know how much it was valued as much as it is now. And then same thing with catchers, like how much you can be looking at their arms compared to how you used to. You know what I mean? Like, obviously the catcher calls the game, but you also need a guy who has a hose out there. Like you need a hose out there regardless, but there are some guys that definitely aren't going to have success at all this year, and they might need to start looking at different catchers.
Oof, that's a tough one, because at the end of the day, you can't steal first base.
Right.
You still got to hit. Catchers still got to hit. They have to do their part. You can't just make this transformation from a defensive-minded catcher to where offensive catchers become so prevalent and important in the game. Guys like Adley Rutschman and the new generation of these catchers that can hit, JT Realmuto. So I think that's not a case. I think they're going to go, and the strategy in finding catching talent is going to remain the same. Guys that can do it on the offensive side and defensive side, but you're not going to kind of restructure the scouting, the scouting strategy just to defend against increased base running, because you're going to give that you can't compromise the offensive value in some of these catchers by with that. But with that being said, I think that's just how it's going to remain. And at the end of the day, you also have to think that it's not necessarily always on the catcher.
Right.
And when you break down, and when you break down, all these numbers and analytics with base running, it's like how many were off the catcher, how many were on the pitcher. So usually there's a metric where back in the day it was like anything as a 1-4, a 1-4 to 1-5. You can say that that was off the pitcher because it was an extended delivery, or like a slide. If it's a slide step, and his pop time is like a 2-2, that's on the catcher. So that balance is still going to be there, but I think they're just going to be at a disadvantage, knowing that once you use those pickoffs, that you're at the mercy of the pitch clock and guys being super savvy.
More speed guys in the lineup too, you think?
No, no. Again, stealing for hitting these days is hard enough. I think you got to get on first base in order for your speed to do anything. So you're always got to keep that in mind.
What about moving away from like just having power bats in your lineup? Like where you're talking about playing small ball, right? Like I could imagine that some of this is to drive like more parity. So the teams that don't have 5 to 6 guys who can all go over 25 home runs.
Listen, that's going to be my favorite part about this season, is that because I'm always curious. I'm always just waiting. I'm waiting for the complete restructure of the Yankee philosophy, where it's like you can't just go get these big bats and expect to just get guys on first and second and hit a 3-run home run.
Right.
Because there's going to be teams like Chicago and Miami and all this, these young scrappy groups that are just going to run them into the ground. And I'll always use San Francisco as a key point there. When they won their world championships, they played small ball. Like they ran people in the ground, they played defense, hit and run, put the ball in play, and just made stuff happen. They didn't have any enormous payroll. It's still about playing baseball, and it's going to be even more prevalent getting back to that. That 2010, 2012, era of baseball where, out the shift, and we're not just sitting back, going, relying on 3, 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
So it'll be great. I think we're going to be looking at like lineups from the 80s where, guys aren't going to hit 20, 30 home runs. You might have, 15, 20 great defense, can run the bases, can just kind of cause havoc. And I think that was the 80s and 90s. That was the golden era. Well, maybe not the 90s. Everybody was juiced in the 90s. In the 90s.
It got different in the 90s.
Absolutely sauced. One of my favorite things to do is just go and watch old home run derbies.
Oh my god,
from the 90s.
Ridiculous.
And I'm looking at this stuff, like, if you've ever been to these ballparks, you would understand like how far these balls are being hit. And like, I don't see how that's possible. Like Juan Gonzalez in Camden Yards going upper deck, and someone who's played left field, to see how far that is. Like it's insane.
And the fact that Ken Griffey Jr. was just doing it, the only one not juicing,
right?
Winning a home run derby too.
Didn't even lift weights.
Yep,
that's absurd. What we were texting with just like a group of buddies. Actually, it might have just been me, Nick, and Josh about if you're gonna hit what
group of buddies.
We are a group of buddies. Yeah. If you were going to hit a walk-off home run, what would be the best park to do it at? Actually, like, no, what would the specific type of walk-off? So we were saying like at Wrigley, like hitting it out of the park, or like hitting it over the Green Monster, or
into the bay,
bay.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the bay's pretty sick.
That's why I think the bay was that kept popping up.
Yeah, the bay's pretty sick. That park in general is super special. Or you could go to Pittsburgh and just hit in like an absolute mammo and have that one hop into the Allegheny, because that's an absolute tank to get it in there. So I would go Pittsburgh.
I think we like the
like
Astros
a Friday
too.
night. Yeah, like a
Friday
Friday
track on the track at the Astros Stadium.
Oh yeah, that's a good one too. Like a Pujols off of a Brad Lidge back in the day.
Yeah,
where it just completely silences the crowd. Yeah, up onto the railroad tracks, or the Soler home run.
That was a
Like if that was a walk off,
tank.
that would be ridiculous. Then Alvarez.
Yeah,
but it's just not the same. It's not the same. Going lefty as opposed to righty. But I would go. Fingers crossed that Pittsburgh gets, for the sake of PNC Park, that Pittsburgh gets back to where that place is sold out on a Friday night, with that setting in the background, hitting the
beautiful.
walk-off. Yeah, that would be sick.
I think Josh threw out the Mets for the Apple too, which is whatever. It's kind of
Yeah,
boring.
I threw out Brewers hitting the slide. Obviously, is a pretty cool thing.
Or into the Rays tank.
Yeah.
Nah, that thing is filthy.
And then the last stat that Passon threw out on his tweet was the number of pitch clock violations. Obviously, there was none in 2022, but in 2023, there were 40 pitch clock violations so far, and that is less than 1 per game, 0.8 per game. That is a huge win, massive win.
Huge. Again, biggest concern going in the first 2 weeks. Our first show talking about the pitch violations, but watching how uncomfortable guys were getting in the box, and guys kind of sitting back and taking a little bit too long with with their adjustment, just getting their placement, all this stuff. And the proof is in the pudding. You're reading off the numbers don't lie. And the one thing that kept coming up is, on a comparative basis, you looked at how the minor leagues went, and for the first 3 or 4 weeks, it was like there was X amount of violations, and then it tapered off significantly over the next, or for the rest of the season.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened this year. You get the 6 weeks during spring training. It was an absolute zoo the first week, and everybody was up in arms like, oh my gosh, this picket is ruining baseball, blah, blah, blah. Look how big it is. I have anxiety, blah, blah, blah. And you know what? By the end, there are guys that were like self-admitted, hey, I'm doing my best to get on board with it. Hosmer came out and said, I'm doing my best to kind of to get into this routine to where I can get locked in within, within the pitch clock. But having 0.8 is, again,
huge.
It's a big win. And then again, not compromising.
It's going to go down too.
Not affecting the game. And that's going to continue to taper off as we move forward. So I feel like if we have this conversation again in May, it'll be even less. So I'm going to make a bold prediction. I'm going to say it's going to be 0.4. I'm assuming it's going to be cut in half. I'm going to say it's going to be 0.4 by the time we have this next conversation in May.
Wow.
I agree. Look, at the end of the day, like, they're professionals. Like, they could adjust to that. It's an easy adjustment, but at the end of the day, it's great for baseball. We're super excited. Some storylines I think we want to touch on here. Hunter Green, your guy, Cincinnati Reds, hit 105. Talk a little bit about that.
I saw Paul text me. He was like, Hunter hit 105. Like, where on what gun? And then I was thinking, I was like, which was it? Statcast? Like, what was it registered on? Because surely you can't have Great American Ballpark. It was like, what's going on with the radar gun?
Yeah,
it's just coincidence that you have the fastest pitches of all time in the same ballpark. But I didn't think Hunter as a starter sitting at 101, but to make a jump to 105 is like, it's crazy. I've played behind Chapman when he's hit 102, and I've seen 103. So it's like, okay, what if,
Did you feel like there was actually a distinct difference? Like when you're playing behind that and you can see? You can 103 from 99 to 103?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's just a different
zip.
It's a different level. It's not just so much the pace and the velocity in which you see it, like visually, but it's how the hitter reacts. It's just like,
got it. I'm sure some of it's also psychological. It's coming in at 103 too, right? Like the physical aspect of it, sure.
He's throwing absolute cheese, but there's some where you can see the hitter catches him off guard where he's just not even close, and you look up at the board, you're like, that was absolute smoke. But yeah, that 105, down in the dirt. I'm not sure if that was an anomaly. He's capable of it, but both 105.3, Chapman hitting 105.8. But the best part about it is that they were both against Andrew McCutchen.
It's insane.
Yeah. So Andrew McCutchen, both his
almost wore one, right?
So he almost wore the 105.8. And
you're throwing out radio stations right now.
And so so that was a brush back, and you can tell. Like I said, it's one thing, anytime like 100 coming in, that's what, but 105.8, almost 106. It was like it was like he went into like this, like almost like a cocoon, because he rolled off of it, took his helmet off, and he had to go out and take a breather for a minute. It was like, I mean, it's scary stuff, but
Do you
Yeah, I
recall
mean-
the fastest pitch you ever saw? And who it was?
yeah, it was Chapman. It was, yeah, Chapman, 101. No, 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 no. That's not true. There was this kid in A ball. His name is Julio de la Cruz, and he was 5'11". He was all legs, and I swear his ass was so high he could like grab his wallet by like reaching over his shoulder. But he had these arms that were like crazy long, and he hit 102. We were playing in West Michigan, and he hit 102. That was the fastest I ever saw. And then the next pitch was like 101 and like hit it off my knuckles, and ended up basically being like a push bunt between the pitcher and first. But it's like I said, it's a different sound, and
Yeah.
it's just a different pop going from 98, 99 to 102.
It's insane. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah, but you don't want to see 101 from the left side either. Like it's
No.
terrifying.
Not at all. Any other storylines jump out to you from this weekend?
No, I think that's the biggest one, is the rules. I think we're going to see a lot less chatter about it. I think with the amount of chaos that was happening early on the season, and just the the criticism over what's happening, I think that can hopefully go to rest. Is that the game ultimately is not going to be compromised. On base percentage is up, which is huge, which means that guys aren't feeling rattled in there. They're having enough time to settle. They're not swinging at bad pitches. They're taking their pitches. They're seeing their pitches. Runs are being scored. Bases are being stolen. It's, the game is normalized itself. And then the game time again is huge because, who wants to sit for another hour and a half with no booze after after the concessions close in the seventh inning.
Well, and clearly the managers are managing for the new rule changes too.
Yeah,
right.
100%.
How many times they're sending the guys on the steals is that's an indicator of that, right? And the spring training, big credit to that, like that they were able to kind of work through the kinks of it, and now it's turned into a better product weekend one. So also all three of our teams, Padres, Reds, and Texas Rangers guy, we are all leading the division or tied for the division for y'all's cases. So
Yeah, any teams that are surprising you? I know it's a long season, but anyone shock you this off season or this weekend?
No, I think, with the Rangers, I think that's a good start. I think it's one of those teams that has a lot of eyeballs just because of the offseason spending.
right.
I think what was really shocking was the Rockies taking 2 of 3 from the Padres, like that.
2 of 4.
2 of 4.
2 of 4.
Yeah, we split.
Still, you have a team that was ranked. I believe the Rockies were in the bottom 5 in the MLB power rankings.
Yeah. It's not a bad lineup, though. Like CJ Cron, Charlie Blackmon, Chris Bryant. The thing is, Charlie Blackmon, for some reason, I don't know if you could speak to this, but he hits better against the Padres than anyone. And I don't know what it is about us, but he's hitting like almost 480 against us in his career. It's insane.
So it's like a Chipper Jones versus the Mets type of deal.
Yeah.
Where for like lifetime,
Or like
he's like a 360 hitter.
He's like Barry Bonds against the Padres.
Yeah, I mean,
with a beard and from the left side.
Yeah,
Or he's also left side.
I think that just happens. But I think that was, that might be like an early red flag, especially for, a team that's, 28, 29 down there with the Reds and the Nationals and the A's to go against what is being predicted as the World Series champion. But that's great. And we try to make the point on the show about, getting off to a good start, and how hopefully this will be this change where you don't have that ability to stack the lineup with big time, power hitting free agents.
Yeah.
And it's going to start to take these young programs that have top minor league prospects, and that they're starting to come through the system. They can run and can go back to a different type of baseball.
Yep.
That teams just traditionally aren't playing. And as you said, if you don't have that defensive catcher, are some of these teams going to be exposed to that? And I think that's going to be really interesting. To whereas you're not going to just be able to sit back and just be an offensive catcher who's expected to hit 30 home runs in a lineup. Like, you're going to have young teams that are going to be on the move on a consistent basis. Then with the shift opening up, you're going to have these singles where those are like for sure runs, because you have speed on the bases. So, I feel like the game's going to kind of regulate itself a little bit. And I think that's exciting. So with this, I think what we've seen across the league is early indicators about what's going to happen, but also just the potential that some of these teams might have to come surprise everybody.
100%. Well, that's baseball talk with Chris Dickerson. Daily Stripe. We'll be back. All right, we're back. Daily Stripe. Chris Dickerson, great guest. Now let's talk some hoops. Championship Monday. My San Diego State Aztecs versus UConn Huskies.
Yeah.
Big game here. Obviously, this would be the second mid-major basketball team to ever win the national championship if San Diego State were to pull off this upset. And this would be a huge upset, in my opinion. Would it not?
Absolutely. Are they
They're
8.5, 7?
7-point dog right now.
7-point dog. Like that's
Yeah. I mean, that's probably
it's a bigger margin, bigger spread margin than the Final Four matchup that the UConn Huskies had against Miami, which was like, I think it was 5 points.
It's like 5.5. I want to say it's a bigger spread than the Bama game too that San Diego State played. I think that was like 6.
That would make sense.
7.
I mean, look, this is a team that almost wasn't in this game, and they had a heroic shot by Butler. One of the buzzer beater. Like
I think that was the first buzzer beater of the tournament.
First true buzzer beater.
Yeah.
First clock expiring like that. The Furman shot was nearly a buzzer beater, but I think there was like 1.8 seconds left. So then whoever they were playing, Virginia, right?
Got the hook.
Yeah, they got to chuck one up there. But that was a game, really, that FAU game, where I felt like FAU pretty much was commanding the narrative of the game, the entirety of it.
Yeah, so San Diego State had the lead very, very early on. They went on a big
like
run.
5-4 or something like that.
Well, no, it was like 14 or 15. They went on like a 14-0 run, and then FAU basically turned on the Jets and cruised the whole way until the very, very end. San Diego State clawed back. But one of the things that
once again, which they've done for the last 3 games in this tournament. Yeah.
So if there's any team that can handle adversity, one of the things that stood out to me, of course, is look, San Diego State is built on defense. Like that's what they're gonna say every single game, all season long, every season. Brian Dutcher's defense is something that if you haven't experienced it before, like you better be prepared. That our head coach Rodney Terry at Texas said that about this weekend going in.
Yeah,
Dutcher defense is different. And in the FAU game, they let up 40 points in the first half, which is something they hadn't done all tournament. So that was very disheartening to me, but they locked down, right? Their next half, it was a lot lower.
Yeah.
One of the things that stuck to me was the offensive rebounds. They were getting almost every single offensive rebound towards the end of the game. They weren't capitalizing on all their shots, but if you win, we were saying most of these games, if you're winning the offensive rebound, discrepancy here,
yeah,
it's likely swinging in your favor.
For sure. And I think that's something that the UConn Huskies do really, really well. Is
they're big.
They're big. They rebound. Sonogo was fantastic in that game against Miami. I mean, Miami, for all intents and purposes, has dominated every single game they've played this tournament. When we were looking at the Final Four teams, you picked San Diego State to win. Right? I think you did.
To win it all?
You picked San Diego State to beat FAU and then win against Miami.
To lose against Miami.
Against Miami.
Whatever,
But here they are. I am still riding with my Final Four pick. I certainly can't say that I, at the beginning of the tournament, said that the Huskies were going to win it all. But I just think they're too much of a buzzsaw. But I hope that this is an incredible game because this has been an awesome tournament. And I'm wearing this sweatshirt, so I'd be doing myself a disservice, my mom a disservice, really, as she's a massive LSU Tiger fan, to not at least acknowledge, because really it's been the biggest story in sports today outside of the WWE Endeavor merger, that what happened with Caitlin Clark, the Iowa Hawkeyes, in the women's national championship last night against Kim Mulkey and the LSU Tigers and Angel Reese and Alexis Morris. It was an unbelievable game. And it was a true testament of, especially in the sport of basketball, it is really, really difficult to win at the highest levels if you do not have a great team.
Yeah.
It is not enough to have the individual best talent in the league, which is what Caitlin Clark is. And she has one more year. She'll be a senior next year. And then we'll see what's going to happen with her in the WNBA. But I imagine she'll be pretty darn effective in that, in the W as well. But I don't know if have you seen the kind of like the back and forth that's been going on with
Between her
the
and-
celebrations?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
There. It's getting feisty.
It's getting
Testy, sorry.
It's definitely getting testy. Yeah, I mean, Caitlin Clark throughout the tournament and throughout her playing time at Iowa has been known to be a trash talker.
Vocal, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the lady for Louisville came out in her press conference and started talking trash as well.
Haley Van Lith.
Yep.
Yeah. But she also, there was like an on-court interview where she was like, it's all like,
It's all love.
we're all competing at the highest level.
They've all
Like,
been playing against each other for years too.
right. That's
AAU and
of course. That's
Yeah.
part of the game, you know, and for someone to kind of highly critique Angel Reese, the LSU forward, I guess she's kind of a center, she's kind of a 4-5, for then doing the John Cena "you can't see me" back at Caitlin Clark is like, I don't like where it's apples to apples here. Like, she should be able to do it if she's winning.
Right.
I get that, like, a lot of people had criticism of her kind of following her around the court after they had already won and doing it at that point. But it's sports. Like, it is a competitive thing
and they're
at
kids.
its core.
They're also kids.
Yeah, they're 20, 21, 19
18,
years
yeah.
old. Like, I don't think when Trae Young put on his performance against the Knicks at the Garden and he bowed in front of everyone, like, yeah, you better believe that the Knicks fans
Yeah.
booed him and all the Hawks fans were on board with it and everyone in the NBA had an opinion about it.
Right.
But I think that's what makes sports and competition so great. So I'll be interested to see just kind of as the dust settles coming into the game tonight, what the tensions are like between these two teams. Because there certainly hasn't been that sort of storyline in the men's side of things. It's been more so an appreciation of coaches like Dutcher,
Right.
teams like the San Diego State, heavily a veteran squad, guys like Matt Bradley, Mensa. I was talking about Sonogo, the guy on UConn. Like, Mensa is going to be really, really tested because he has been, I think, the Mountain West Defensive Player of the Year for 2 years in a row.
Yep.
And so it's going to be him versus Sonogo, who scored 20-plus points against Miami. That'll be really interesting. But like I said, UConn, I think, just has a little bit too much firepower. Andre Jackson, who will probably get drafted in the second round. And then his name is escaping me. They're UConn's best player.
It's not Sonogo. Is not their best player. You don't think?
He's not, which is like, that's the crazy thing.
He's leading their team in points. I mean,
He is, but I can't believe I'm forgetting this guy's name right now. But Hawkins.
Oh yeah.
Hawkins is their best player, and he'll be probably like a top 25 pick in the first round.
Yeah, to really quickly on LSU, really awesome first national championship that they've won in the women's basketball. So, like, it's cool to see a team that, you know, turns it all the way around and rebuilds.
Second
something.
year for Kim Mulkey as their head coach.
Yeah, crazy outfits on the court.
Yeah. Nine new personnel members on this team this year.
Yeah.
From year 1 to year 2.
That's as good as you can hope for.
So the transfer portal coming into action here.
Yeah, big time. But back to this San Diego State UConn game. Look, for me, when I watch the San Diego State team, they miss so many buckets. They're not a good shooting team, but
They don't have an easy time scoring.
They never have an easy time scoring. No. Some of their guys their top scorer is Matt Bradley, and he averages 12.7 points a game. And sometimes he'll go missing, right? He'll start off really hot, like that last game, and then he doesn't hit a
nowhere
shot
to be found
for like 15, 16 minutes.
And then hit that clutch 3, though.
Right, exactly. So I guess clutch time is when it matters most. But yeah, I mean, the guys that have been playing good defense all year got to play the best defensive game they've ever played.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's asking for too much, but I mean, at the end of the day, like, this UConn team has not made it close for any team they've played. This was the closest. It was a 13-point game against Miami. That was the closest game.
And at the majority of the game, the margin was wider than that. It was 18. It was 22. It was 17. Yep. I just think that they're a team that doesn't take their foot off the pedal. And fortunately for the games that San Diego State has played previously, they've been able to take advantage of those opportunities where the other offenses had their lulls and claw their way back, like you said. And a lot of that has to do with their defense. But I don't see how they can slow UConn down in transition.
Right.
They're so athletic. And then they both rebound really, really well. So I don't think that they're necessarily going to have an advantage. San Diego State's not going to have an advantage there. But I mean, I hope it's a better game than the margin, the spread indicates.
I mean, okay, I'm gonna pick San Diego State just for my heart,
Of course.
but obviously, if you're looking at the trends, I feel like this line is a little lopsided. Like, you gotta look and see how close San Diego State has played games. So 1 point here, 1 point there, right? Kind of scratch their way. UConn's been dominating 7 points. Like, it's like half of the closest margin that you've gotten to.
Yeah. Well, that's what I said about that last game. I was like 5.5 points. Miami, like, hammered that.
Yeah, so I think the line's going to get hammered here for UConn.
Really?
Yeah, at 7.
What would this game mean for San Diego and this city? Because I saw, like, there was someone that tweeted something about, like, being at the you clapped back at whatever this tweet was because it seemed like they kind of didn't know what they were talking about.
The guy had no clue what he was talking about.
It was an image of Petco.
Yeah, so I'll even pull up the tweet and I'll read it and I'll call this guy out because it's absolutely ridiculous. So essentially, San Diego State wins on the buzzer beater,
right?
Like at pregame of the Padres game on Saturday.
Okay,
right? It's the third game of the season at Petco Park. It's on a Saturday. Just so people know, like, downtown San Diego, the Gaslamp area, there's sports bars everywhere. So you can go get a beer. You can
because that's where Petco is.
Yeah, you can have lunch and you can go to the ballpark. So I'm sure a lot of these people probably started watching the game at a bar.
Yeah.
And then they worked their way to Petco Park before the start of the game. And they had literally the game playing on one of the video boards and everyone saw the buzzer beater and everyone went crazy. Like, it was pregame, not the entire section wasn't filled up. But this guy, Sean Marash, I haven't even heard of him before, but just saw a tweet. I guess he's a host for CBS Radio, New York Giants guy. Basically was saying that it's fraud fans in San Diego. There's like 160 games, there's 81 home games in Major League Baseball. Like, if you're a true diehard, like, you're gonna miss an elimination game to go to a Padres game. It's like, okay, slow your roll. Like, a lot of these people probably had tickets beforehand. It's opening series weekend. You watch most of the game at a bar. You can follow on your phone. Like, this means so much to the city. Like, you don't necessarily even have to go to San Diego State to just be from San Diego and be so close to a championship for the first time since 1998. That's when the Padres won the World Series and got beat by the Yankees. Before that, they got beat by the Niners in, I think, 94 in the Super Bowl. And before that, it was 1984, Padres versus the Tigers. So, like, we have not gotten close to getting the championship very long. So this means a lot. This guy, Sean Marash, has that typical New York bias where you're used to having the Giants win the Super Bowl. You're used to having the Yankees be there. You know, like, this is a ridiculous take. Like, it's so ridiculous because...
Well, I think for people that don't know, like, San Diego State has become the city's
team.
College.
Yeah,
right?
oh, for sure.
Like, there are other colleges there. Like, USD exists.
USD,
like,
but, like, that's not like a big sports school.
Right, so it's the equivalent of, like, our alma mater, like, Austin's biggest college school is the University of Texas.
100%. And look, this guy is saying, like, oh, they're not supposed to cheer if they're there. Like, okay, they played on the video board and it's a buzzer beater. What are you supposed to?
And the game hasn't even started.
You're supposed to golf clap. Like, oh, that was
well,
cool.
I don't really necessarily know, like,
even
the
if you're not a
alternatives
fan.
that he's suggesting because, one, I'll tell you, like, my mom's an LSU fan. I looked at purchasing her a ticket, and I know it's the women's game, not the men's game. And by that, I mean to say that I could imagine that the women's tickets were actually maybe more because Caitlin Clark was playing in, as opposed to the SDSU versus Connecticut. But I guarantee you that they're nowhere south of $350 for the worst ticket in Houston,
right,
for this game. So. Yeah. Not everyone can afford to go. Even if you went to SDSU and you're the biggest SDSU fan, you have a YouTube account following SDSU and you have over 100,000 subs, it doesn't necessarily mean that you can afford getting to Houston, watching the Final Four, staying in a hotel, and going to this game. Like,
I looked into flights and they were like $600 each way.
Yeah,
just to get to Houston from LA, and that's like on Friday, Saturday, and then leaving on Tuesday, but. Yeah, it's definitely, and I'm sure the hotel prices, and then obviously on Saturday you got to pay the admission for 2 games,
right?
Because you're not gonna just like pay for one game and they're gonna show your way out. Like, you have to pay for both games.
But there's so many cities that have like groupings of teams, right? Like in New York, there's like your Yankees, Rangers, Giants fans, right?
Right.
That's what they always say, right? Like those
But in
teams
San Diego, it's
and your
literally just
Knicks fans.
it's literally just the Padres and the Aztecs now.
yeah.
Chargers are gone. A lot of people have disowned
And that was a
them.
very contentious split between some
Yep.
people sticking with them in
Yep.
San Diego and other people being like, no, they're not our team
A
anymore.
lot of people like don't follow the NBA, and if they do, there's some Clippers fans because it started in
San Diego.
So
Yeah.
like it's kind of all over the place. And then of course you have the women's soccer team, which has been doing great. But at the end of the day, like it's really just Padres and Aztecs.
What are they, the Wave?
Yeah, the Wave.
Yeah.
Yep. And they also have a lacrosse team too. I
Nice.
think it's called the Loyal.
Hey.
Because San Diego State and San Diego fans are loyal. We're loyal to our city and our team. But no, I think I'll just end it with it'll be so massive for the city of San Diego to finally bring a championship, because there are people that have lived there and that have been alive for 50 plus years that have never seen their team win a championship. Because the last time a San Diego sports team won a championship, I think, was 1964, 1965, and it was the Chargers when they were in the AFL.
Long time ago. And I think for UConn, they now, since 2000, maybe since 99,
They've won 3.
they've won,
Or this will be their 3rd if they win, right?
no, this would be their 4th.
Oh, wow.
Because they won with Emeka
early
Okafor,
on, yeah.
they won with Kemba Walker, and then they won with Shabazz
Sean
Napier.
Yep.
So this would be their 4th. They also have the most Final Four appearances out of any college basketball program.
Right.
So they are really cementing themselves in this. I guess, what are we talking
Upper echelon of
What's
of
it? What's
blue
every
blood.
1,000 years? Is that a millennium? What is it?
Every 1,000 years is a millennium.
Millennial?
Millennium, I guess. I don't
I
know.
don't know.
They're the team of the millennium.
They're becoming that. They already are, I guess.
Yeah, they're the team of this century.
Okay, what do you? People were throwing this out there because Kim Mulkey now she's won with LSU. This is her 2nd year as her head coach. She also, where she kind of got her start was at Baylor, and she really turned that program into something special. She won, I think she's won 3 national titles in total as a head coach. Is it more impressive to do what she's done, where you go to 2 different programs and get them both to title status,
Right.
or to be a Gino Auriemma type coach where he's won 9 titles, but all at UConn, staying in the same school, the same pipelines, the same high schools that you're tapping into from a recruiting standpoint, but just building a winning culture?
9 is a lot.
9's a lot.
I would say if
You think so? The amount matters.
yeah, I mean, if she can get to like 5 or 6, like that's really impressive.
Yeah,
But 9 is a lot.
right.
That's ridiculous. I mean,
I'm trying to think of like the comp. So it would be like, because Saban won
at LSU.
at LSU,
Yeah, but
and obviously, but still he won. I mean,
Yeah.
college football is different though. Well,
Yeah,
they're
yeah.
both really, really challenging to win at. But I feel like
Urban Meyer did
with Gino's teams and UConn, like the best player in high school, if you were a women's high school basketball player, you were going to UConn.
right.
Maya Moore, Brianna Stewart, like that. I could just name, I could name 5 to 10 girls and women, and that would be probably 5 to 10 of the top 25 best
Yeah.
WNBA players of all time.
I think also like you have to consider like where the programs are. So like with Urban Meyer, like he goes to Florida, he goes to Ohio State. Like those are both programs that
Right.
are like not super hard to win at. I mean they're difficult, but they're not like mid-major schools. They're not like small conference. They're not.
You've got established pipelines there before you even step foot
and
on
the same
campus.
with LSU and
For
Bama,
sure.
right? But like building up a program like Baylor, that's pretty impressive. And
Yeah.
and look, I don't think LSU women's basketball has been anything special over the years, right?
They've been pretty solid. I would say like they have one of the best college basketball players that really kicked things off for them. I'd say since 2000, they've been a solid program.
Right.
But I mean, they hadn't won a title, so there you go. But a lot of it was like Don Staley, South Carolina, over the last 5 years, and Gino Auriemma were always in the way. Like
Right.
that UConn team. I mean, how many games in a row did they win? Like 3.5 seasons where they didn't lose a
Yeah,
game
it
or
was
something
like
like
100
that.
and something.
It's
Yeah,
ridiculous.
got snapped.
How are
It's
you?
ridiculous.
How can you expect any other team? Like you can't even look at them with a critical lens because it's like
It's so
you
dominant.
can't do anything.
Yeah, it's out of this world dominant.
Yeah.
But just in terms of the men's championship this evening, I don't know if you're a sports fan that doesn't have loyalties to either of these teams, I don't know how you can be rooting for UConn, honestly. You gotta root for the 5 seed mid-major San Diego State. And look, I know UConn's a 4 seed. A lot of people did expect them, but a lot of people did not expect them to make this run.
Yeah.
Because they're, you had Houston, you had Bama, you had Kansas, you had our Longhorns. Like, a lot of people picked other teams.
Gonzaga and UCLA were both in their region too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they went through some tough matchups, but I mean, just the story to bring the city of San Diego their first title, to second mid-major ever to win a title. Brian Dutcher taking over for Steve Fisher too. Like, he's a guy who was literally under Steve Fisher his entire career.
Yeah.
And when Steve Fisher decided to retire, handed him the keys to the kingdom, the San Diego State kingdom, and built this program. And look, we talk about this on our other shows as well, that San Diego State was kind of robbed of an opportunity that COVID year where they would have been a 1 seed, right? Where they didn't end up having a
Malachi
tournament.
with Malachi Flynn.
Yeah, with Malachi Flynn. It was a great team. And, this is kind of their shot at redemption. I kind of, it's sad because like every year when I make a bracket, I make one bracket just for fun that has San Diego State going all the way and Texas going all the way if they're in different sides of the bracket.
Yeah.
And this is the one year I didn't do it.
Ugh.
And if I would have done it, like, I guarantee I would have won all of our brackets.
Yeah.
No one has San Diego State in their final.
Unless they're an
Unless
SDSU
they went
fan.
there and they're a
right.
diehard. Yeah.
I definitely think that, interestingly, like, there were no 1 seeds in this Final Four, which I know is
No 2 seeds or 3 seeds.
right. So it's statistical anomaly. But a lot of people, at least in the bracket challenge that we had UConn.
Yeah.
So there was some knowledge there that this was a team that was not to be trifled with, and they have stepped up big time. I mean, if they cover, this is going to be an absolutely
most dominant
tourney run. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure we can look, and there's probably been some pretty dominant ones in the past. But
right. But in a time where, like, again, there are no 1, 2, or 3 seeds. Like, this is the prime example of parity in college basketball.
Right. I also think that, like,
and all that to say, like, if you compared it to whatever other dominant run there was, I imagine that it's some team that had, like, Bill Walton or like Jabbar,
right.
So it's like, it's not even fair how much better they were.
Yeah, and I also think that in a time and in a culture where gambling and just like the brackets are so prominent, like, everyone makes a bracket. Now everyone makes a bracket. I don't know if that was the case 10 years ago, but like now, like, my girlfriend makes a bracket. Like,
I mean, at least I would imagine,
your
like,
mom makes a bracket.
It really started. The heavy push was like when the internet became highly used by everyone. So like probably 2000 is when. Probably like 2005 is when like the brackets were like really.
But I mean, like, even if you don't follow college basketball, like, you just make one just to have fun, just to like be a part of, kind of like,
pick which mascot you like better. Like,
exactly. Like, win a gift card. Like that's what my girlfriend's work is doing. And the fact that like gambling is also integrated into this as well. Like, there's legalized gambling now, that covering the spread is like such a big deal. Like, if you're betting on UConn every single matchup here, you're cruising. So who do you have?
I am going to pick objectively UConn, but I will be rooting for SDSU with you.
SDSU, wear the cherry stripe. Go Aztecs. See you tomorrow.